Officer Jason Morales was used to the night shift. He enjoyed the solitude and the occasional excitement of patrolling the outskirts of his small town. But there was one area he dreaded, an old, dense forest known as Blackwood. Blackwood was infamous for disappearances and strange sightings. Most officers avoided it, but Jason prided himself on his bravery. One cold October night, a call came through about a stranded vehicle near the forest's edge. When Jason arrived, the car's hazard lights blinked faintly in the distance. The vehicle was abandoned, its door wide open, and no sign of the driver. He called out into the darkness, but only the rustling leaves responded. Jason's flashlight pierced the blackness as he followed footprints leading into the woods. The deeper he ventured, the heavier the air became, thick with an unnatural silence. Suddenly, he heard soft whispers, faint but chilling, as though someone was speaking just out of earshot. "Hello? Is someone there?" Jason called, his voice cracking. The whispers stopped, replaced by a low, guttural growl. Sweat dripped down his face as he swung his flashlight around, but nothing was there. Then, he saw it, a pair of glowing eyes watching him from the shadows. Frozen in place, Jason could barely breathe as the creature stepped closer. It was humanoid but distorted, its limbs too long, its face too pale. Jason fired a warning shot, and the figure disappeared into the trees. He sprinted back to the car, only to find fresh handprints smeared across his patrol vehicle. Later, he learned the area was once the site of a massacre, and locals believed the forest was cursed. Moral: sometimes, the bravest are the most vulnerable in the face of the unknown. Detective Lisa Warren was investigating a string of burglaries in an old, run-down neighborhood. Her leads pointed to an abandoned building that once served as a mental asylum. Determined to gather evidence, Lisa decided to check it out herself. The asylum loomed like a giant tomb, its windows shattered and walls covered in graffiti. Inside, the air was damp, and every step echoed through the empty halls. As she explored, Lisa found a locked cell with the number 13 etched into the door. The lock was old and rusted, but the door creaked open easily. Inside, the walls were covered in scribbled words, "Help me. He's here. Don't trust him. *" Lisa's flashlight flickered as she felt a cold draft, despite no open windows. Then, she heard it, a faint tapping sound, like fingers drumming against metal. It grew louder, more insistent, until it seemed to come from every direction. Lisa backed out of the room, but the door slammed shut behind her. Panic set in as she tried to open it, but the knob wouldn't budge. A shadow moved across the crack under the door, and Lisa froze. "Who's there?" she shouted, her voice trembling. The tapping stopped, and a low, eerie voice whispered, "You shouldn't be here." When the door finally opened, the room was empty, but Lisa felt a presence watching her. She later discovered the cell belonged to a patient who had vanished without a trace decades ago. Moral: not all mysteries are meant to be solved. Officer Ryan Caldwell had just started his shift when he received a strange 911 call. The voice on the other end was faint and static-filled, but it sounded like a child. "Help, he's coming," the voice said before the line went dead. Ryan traced the call to an old farmhouse on the outskirts of town. When he arrived, the house appeared abandoned, its windows boarded up and the yard overgrown. Still, he couldn't ignore the call for help. He entered cautiously, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. The house smelled of mildew and decay, and the floorboards creaked under his weight. "Hello? Is anyone here?" Ryan called, but only silence answered. As he moved through the house, he found a child's room frozen in time. Toys were scattered across the floor, and a dusty crib sat in the corner. Then, he noticed something chilling, a phone off the hook, its receiver dangling. The phone crackled to life, and the same faint voice said, "He's still here." Ryan spun around, his flashlight revealing a shadow darting past the doorway. He followed, his heart pounding, but the shadow led him deeper into the house. Finally, he reached the basement, where the air was freezing. In the corner, he saw a small figure huddled on the floor. "Are you okay?" Ryan asked, approaching slowly. The figure turned, revealing hollow eyes and a face twisted in pain. It screamed, a sound so piercing it made Ryan's ears ring. He stumbled back, running up the stairs and out of the house. Later, he discovered the farmhouse had been the site of a murder decades ago. The victims were a mother and her child, and their killer was never caught. Moral: the past can haunt the present in ways we can't escape. These stories remind us that even those tasked with protecting us are not immune to the horrors of the unknown. Courage and duty can only carry us so far when facing the unexplainable. For police officers, the most terrifying calls are the ones they can never truly answer.